will now move on to our next panel discussion. The legal profession is changing at a rapid rate, with technological advances and globalization having an impact on how lawyers work and interact with one another. Time to have an open discussion about where we see the profession going in the next decade or so. So let us call upon our panelists. Advocate Kanchan Talreja, Senior Counsel for Advocate Kanchan Talreja and Associates. Welcome. Can we get one more chair, please, for the panel? Hotel, please, if we can get one more chair. Thank you. Next, we have Hannah Beko, Head of Mission, Legal Studio Solicitors. Welcome, Hannah. Mr. Mark Seah, Senior Partner for Dentons Rodyk. Welcome, Mark. Virginie Tassin Campanella, Founder and Managing Director for VTA Tassin. Welcome. Thun Waegger, CEO and Founder Facilitator for Waegger Negotiations Institute. Welcome. And last but not least, Mr. Franco Taisch, Partner, Barandun Legal and Tax. Welcome.
We got a timer.
The last 10 minutes are for questions from the audience. Thank you.
Hello everyone. So we have got such a large panel for this topic that Mark and I are going to be co-moderating. I also thought it was fantastic that this topic obviously excited the interest of so many of us. So yes, to be able to keep all these rowdy lawyers in check, there are two of us moderating. So I'm going to come to each of them and ask them to introduce themselves. So Kanchan, I'm going to hand over to you.
Hi, Hannah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kanchan Talreja. Having practiced in the Supreme Court of India, various high courts and the trial courts in India, I have dealt with a lot of about 250 to 300 clients, and I'm proud to say we have been able to get 90% results in favor of our clients. I have singularly handled a lot of pro bono matters, and I am the legal head of the National Sports Club of India, which is based in Mumbai. I legally represent INLAX General Hospital, also based in Mumbai, and I'm the legal head and the trustee of Rashtriya Seva Samiti. Thank you. Over to you, Roar.
Thank you. My name is Roar, and it's very helpful that Katy Perry made a song about me. So that's it's made it much more easy to travel abroad. I am a reformed lawyer, I call myself. I've worked in the law industry for the last 20 years, but 5 years ago I established a negotiation institute where I do trainings in negotiation, mediation, and conflict resolution. So I do the foremost to help people stay outside the courtroom, but I'm very happy to be here back in the room with a lot of lawyers. So I hand it over to Mr. Franco.
Thank you, Roar. Hello, everybody. We are sitting here in finance, money, and law, and unfortunately I'm both. So I spent 30 years plus in focus on the financial industry next to health, medical industry and technology industry in various roles, be it on the C-level, in different roles, on the board of directors level, be it as an attorney, independent advisor, be it as an entrepreneur with his own money in these industries, and finally as a professor at the interface between legal and business. Today, I'm partner of a Swiss law firm, business law firm in Zurich and Zug. I'm partner of a business advisory company, boutique in Zurich, and entrepreneur in different industries. hand over to you, Virginie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Virginie Tassin Campanella. I'm an attorney at law at the Paris Bar. I'm practicing also in Zurich as a foreign European lawyer. And I founded in 2016, so almost a bit more than 6 years ago, almost, my law firm, which is a public international law firm dedicating to international issues raised by sea and ocean activities. So it's any type of activities in the sea or concerning, for example, marine resources, which could be mineral or biological. So the range of activities and topics are quite fascinating. I'm working, for example, on deep sea mining, biological use, for example, for cosmetics or pharmaceuticals, cooperation, regional fisheries in conflict zone, ocean data. We're talking a lot about privacy of data. There's a lot of issues related to ocean data access and use. For example, the data that is collected from satellites for ocean modeling of the health of environment of the ocean, or could be used, for example, for mapping the seabed. So it's quite fascinating, and I'm very happy to be here and part of this panel. Mark?
Thank you. Good afternoon. So I am Mark, and as you can hear from the various panelists, that we have a very diverse and interesting panel with us. So what do I bring to the table? Well, I'm just a dispute resolution lawyer. Formally, I am the co-head of the commercial litigation practice in Singapore for Dentons. I also do a range of arbitration and mediation. But more than that, I'm really a problem solver. That's what dispute resolution is all about. And part of my job is keeping clients out of problems. So I'm in risk management as well. Over to you, Hannah.
Oh, thank you, Mark. Yes, my name's Hannah Beko. I'm a commercial property lawyer. I've been self-employed with my own legal business for about nearly 11 years now. Interestingly, it seems a lot of us had a shift in 2016, so I wonder what was happening that year. I had by then been running my business for sort of 3 or 4 years and hit a stage that many lawyers see in their careers of chronic stress and almost burnout. And actually, the lessons I learned at that time led me to create my training, coaching, and speaking organization in 2016. And so I've had thousands of lawyers, probably had the privilege to train and coach thousands of lawyers over the last 6 years. And it really is a passion of mine. So I'm very passionate about mental health and well-being in the law, how we can change the culture, how we can stop so many people leaving the career that they trained for so long to join, and how they can be more authentic. And in fact, I am that person who brings their book everywhere with them. I wrote The Authentic Lawyer earlier this year, which has been 6 years in the creation and research. So those are sort of passions of mine alongside actually running my legal business. So we have lots of things to talk about, but I think before we get into questions, Mark, you had a little piece you were going to open us with.
Yeah, I thought that we would open up with a central theme. So here, really what we're going to talk about in this very broad area is how we can be better as lawyers, right? How can we better serve our clients? And how do we keep our profession sustainable? Hannah, you talked about the mental stress, the chronic stress that lawyers feel. And indeed, there's probably no better time than this to ask the question, what does the future of the legal profession hold for itself? How do we ensure sustainability, and how do we make sure that we will still be relevant and thriving in the next 10 years or so? We begin with the backdrop of geopolitical issues which are fairly seismic in nature, to say the least. We've got the Ukraine war, tensions between countries, a shifting of powers, strained relations between countries. And within the legal profession, we see numerous headwinds. We talked about the changing landscape, the intense regulatory environment that we now have to practice in, with increased scrutiny over cybersecurity, data protection, as we've talked about this morning during the panels. And at the same time, there are numerous challenges as the law changes. We see a renewed conversation about ESG, the environment, and how that conversation continues to mature will again affect us as practitioners, as the legal community. And how then do we stay on top of things and relevant to our clients? The legal profession has faced a difficult time during this pandemic as we emerge from it. We've seen the great resignation, as it's called, across the globe. In Singapore itself, 2022 saw a 30% year-on-year increase in lawyers leaving the profession, and you guessed it, it's the junior members of the bar. So that's where we stand, but it's all not doom and gloom. At the same time, we're on the cusp of a technological change. We're in the midst of a revolution. We heard about the changes in open banking just a minute ago, and the future is bright for lawyers. But what is our direction of travel? Where are we going from here? And that's the questions that we would like to talk about today and to hear from you as well.
Thank you, Mark. Yes, I was just thinking actually that for years I've tried to talk my own children out of becoming lawyers because of what I've seen the profession in, many of the reasons you talked about. But actually my nearly 13-year-old has decided now that he wants to become a lawyer, maybe because I own a firm and he thinks he's going to walk into it, but you know. But actually, just like Mark said, I think there's so many positives that actually I am now not trying to talk him out of it anymore, so that is very good. I'm going to come in a moment to Kanchan to start us off, but I thought I would throw out a quick question to the audience. Does anyone remember the 394th District Court of Texas and why it was in the news in February 2021? A video that did the rounds. No? Does anybody remember the phrase, "I'm not a cat, Judge"?
Cat.
No? If people have missed that video, please do give me a shout and I'll send you a link. But I think it was a nice moment where a lot of the legal profession across the globe came together and showed the world that we have a humorous side. I don't think it was so humorous for the poor man who was, representing his client in court in front of the judge.
I'm not sure if it's intentional either.
Well, no, I'm sure it wasn't intentional, and I think the poor man was absolutely mortified. But I think it goes to show partly some of the challenges we've all faced during the pandemic. So, Kanchan, I'm going to ask you to talk to us.
Some of the challenges from working from home, when your children are using the same device like you are. Fair enough. So we are dealing with a very vast subject, but I specialize in litigation. So most of my working hours are in court, and that is the subject I would really like to touch on. The last 3 years have been challenging with the COVID pandemic, which has led to a surge of online hearing. How successful was that? While the highest litigation and regulatory proceedings did very well, the lower trial courts faced a number of challenges, mainly due to lack of funds and the sheer size of the caseloads that they deal with. As a result of which, the trial courts were not successful at all for online hearing. However, clients did notice and were positive towards this change. It saved time, it saved money, and brought about results at home. So while we are aware that we are all headed towards online hearing, what I really feel is a blended approach would do well. In the next decade, lawyers will be faced with the challenge of working with machines. A lot of our jobs will be done by machines. However, there are several cases where personal appearance is a must. The pixels on the screen cannot replace the need of a judge to see the sweat on the brows of a defendant or a witness while giving his evidence. This is my view today. It is a must that lawyers keep themselves abreast with not only the amendments in law and the precedents, but also with the latest technology that help our field. The use of artificial intelligence while we are in courtroom arguing will help us bring about more effective resolutions and solutions, saving time, the court's time, as a result of which we will be able to deal with cases faster and better. Our main problem, access to justice, will be eradicated completely with the help of technology. Today, 46% of us have access to justice. What happens to the rest? Bringing online resolution will make justice accessible to all. That is how I feel about online hearing, a blended approach.
Thank you, Kanchan. And actually, I don't know if you're aware of this, but that leads us very smoothly into a question that I had for you, Virginie. Because I know when we were talking earlier this week, you were talking a lot about how people, I know you didn't phrase it access to justice, but you phrased it as in people don't always know when to come to a lawyer or when they should, or they don't come early enough. And what I'm thinking is, I think to go to your point, Kanchan, and as we were hearing about from one of the speakers earlier, the courts are obviously absolutely overrun at the moment. And so maybe if people came and took advice earlier, maybe things perhaps wouldn't get that far. So you're going to talk to us a little bit about sort of why and when people ought to come to lawyers in the future a bit earlier.
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. I will say specifically in my field, so I'm really in a niche, within the law, because I'm working in international law, and more specifically in public international law. So usually it's a field that is reserved for states. And this field has been actually, and is still only valued for dispute settlement. So, the part of the access to justice for state is very important. It's a very big concern. You have basically arbitration and what we call international dispute settlements before international courts. But international law at the beginning was designed to promote peace. That's the goal. That when we went out of the Second World War, we created international law to promote peace, to make sure there will be agreed minimum standards between all states. So for me, actually valuing these fields only through the scope of dispute settlement is really sad. We're missing the point. And basically, as a lawyer, I'm even more happy when states don't go to court, They can settle their dispute before, or even better, they will never have disputes. So that's, the dream states. So the advisory part of this field, public international law, doesn't much exist, actually. It's not well developed. And it's even less developed for the private sector, for NGOs and international organizations and regional organizations. But this advisory part is really crucial, because at the end we've created rules, in different forms, and we actually, lawyers or a judicial authority to make sure rules are implemented, not only defended, but also implemented. So being able to advise on the implementation of this law to any type of actors is really crucial. So we need to disconnect even lawyers themselves, but the general public need to be able to be more educated about the wide range of services and the use of lawyers in the society. And I have many examples that I can give. I'm working more, at the international level, so with diplomacy, international organization, and it's not only the private sector. I will say lawyers between themselves, we don't know the fields of others, so we still have a lot to learn. Governments, for example, I remember my first meetings with ambassadors, they got scared that a lawyer were contacting them because they were believing that, they were threatened. So I had to say, no, I'm actually representing a client. So there's nothing related to dispute settlements. And then you have, for example, international organizations that believe that international lawyers only represent private interests, which is not true. But you have other international organizations believing that you only serve states, which is not true. So there's a lot of misunderstanding about, what lawyers do and how they could contribute, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. The practice of law is a very broad one. And could you share, maybe in the next 10 years or so, as we talk about the purpose of lawyers, the role of lawyers, and the interaction between the different fields, how that interaction can be improved to avoid that misunderstanding? Where do you see the the gaps, and how do you think we could fill them?
Well, I think there's two dimensions. There's the dimension within, I will say, the legal sector, so in between us, academics, practitioners, and all the ecosystem that is surrounding the legal industry. We need to understand what exists and how we can create an ecosystem that works in synergies, because most of services are complementary. They're not competing with each other, but we still have a way of looking at it as a competition. So I think there's a big problem here. And then more generally, I will say there's a problem also with ourselves, because, for example, lawyers practicing in law firms, they stay within law firms, we don't have an important impact in the society. So, for example, if we take big issues like sustainable development, and everyone is concerned with sustainable development. We all heard about sustainable development goals and issues related to sustainability. I never hear lawyers about how they could actually have an impact on this, but not within their law firm, not only for their clients, but just to contribute with their expertise to debates, public debates, or public opinions, or journals, interviews. And I believe that the issue we have right now, especially with greenwashing, so it's something that I work a lot within the blue economy, what we talk about, it's also happening because no lawyers are speaking, because for us, greenwashing is nonsense. We have like a methodology to prevent it, but we never hear about this. So companies, when they are left alone with no advice, they don't know how to do with all the policies. They follow the policy without having a critical thinking, and they get into the trap. So I think being outside of the legal world and being more accessible and visible would be really important.
Yeah. Wow, I absolutely love that. And I think your main 2 points that I picked up there is competition. We have historically, as a profession, I think, seen ourselves as being in competition with one another. I see that changing already and continuing to change in the future. We can collaborate far more closely, as you've said. But also, yes, lawyers even themselves realizing that they could step out of just the small world that maybe they knew and into other areas where they could have a big impact as well and help. And I know someone I know who works in client relationship management, one common thing he hears from them is, I wish my lawyers were more human. So again, I'm going to come to Raw in a moment. But when I was stalking you on LinkedIn, Raw, I saw that recently you'd done a training on hardcore soft skills. And I love that. Hardcore soft skills. So can you tell us a little bit more about being more human and these skills?
I definitely will. I think that is one of the elements lawyers need to learn more about. And when we planned this, we talked about starting at the educational level and at the universities, and not depending on what law firm you start with it, and your partner's view on how lawyers should work. And back to what you said, Vivian, use us earlier. And we need to adapt to the person coming into the room. And the person coming into the room has often been in a conflict. And when they have been in a conflict, minor things could be huge. And we need to have a better understanding with the use of human skills why this is happening. So one of those elements, I believe, I used to say, humanity is the is the key. And it's the key for us to adapt to the future, to be better lawyers. And better lawyers, so the clients would come to us on an earlier stage. And I decided when I started my company not to use my title as a lawyer. And a lot of people were afraid, a strange move, because that's such a traditional and well-established title. And I decided I wanted to be a facilitator. And I wanted to avoid some of the elements you met when they said, hey, why do you bring a lawyer into the room? I don't want to be the advisor they are afraid of. I want them to open. So back to your question, who am I? And be aware of my own assumptions and biases with the people I'm meeting. Maybe the client, maybe the other side. And I try not to use the word counterpart. I try to use the other side. Our ability to understand them. Where do they come from? Their perspectives. So challenging ourselves in the approach of our own clients and of the other party, I think that is a way of bridging more than building, walls between us. And part of that is also another concept I have created together with a psychologist. And we call that negotiations with the brain in mind. And brain in mind because the brain is influencing us whatever we think we are rational and logic. And I know when I make decisions, it's many of those decisions that are made on an emotional level. So for us to be more understanding of what the brain bring with us to the table, I think that's part of my answer to your question.
Thank you, Roar. I know you'd have so much more to share with us. In fact, all of the panel here have got a lot to share, so I would find them on the breaks and things to hear more. But Franco, I want to come to you next because Roar almost stole your thunder there, but not the exact words. Because on our Zoom meeting this week, you said something that stuck with me. You said, shaping of our profession must start in the universities. Tell us more.
Yes, because there the young people are educated and the young people are the future. So if we still teach our young lawyers or finance experts the way we have been taught, probably they are not fit and cannot cope with the new environment. So it must really start there. I come to that back right away. May I be a little bit more
Please.
provocative than you guys?
Please do.
Law is not enough. Finance is not enough. We are not in the middle of the world. We are not driving the world. Who is driving the world? It has been said so many times, the human beings. No one else, the human beings. And therefore, at least I have no legal issues. I have no financial issues. I'm happy. I have issues of life. I have issues of business. Whether this has a legal aspect, a psychological aspect, a financial aspect, a technical aspect, I couldn't care less as a client. I have an issue of my life. And I think here we have to change minds. And this starts in the university. Of course, where else? Where else? So we should focus on the needs of our clients, accepting that there are no legal issues. There are only issues of life. And for that, you need a counselor. Are there Italian-speaking people in here? There is a wonderful Italian word for it. It's called consigliere. Consigliere, you're laughing, you know it because you speak it. Yeah, you speak Italian, I have learned. Consigliere. Consigliere is the trusted advisor. Takes you by the hand. Takes you by the hand and go with you through the storm. That's what we're gonna be and have to be in the future, and this starts in university. Something else we never should. No, probably most of the lawyers and finance experts don't have it. Who is curious in that room here? Really curious, wants to know everything. Probably all of you, but some outside of this room not. We are on a way to lose to be curious. Yes. And if we lose that, we lose the, in my point of view, only advantage to what we heard this morning of artificial intelligence. AI can do everything. They can do everything in finance, they can do everything in law, but what they can't do is being curious. And, in my belief, also empathic. I know this lady in this morning said empathic, you can learn that as a machine, I'm not sure, but not curious. And the lawyer must be curious. He must find out what the issue of life is. of that human being coming into the room. That's so important. And there we should start in university to learn that.
No, that's really so true. And, I'm glad you mentioned curiosity. We started with I'm not a cat, so I see the link there. Franco, you started really about talking about our universities, and as trite as it may sound, the young people, the young lawyers are our future. But for those of us in management, in law firms, and indeed for all of us as lawyers, and for those of us who are not lawyers and are in the financial community or in society at large, there is a problem because the young people are leaving. And that really comes to the point that you raised, Hannah, which is about mental wellness, well-being. Are we looking after ourselves and the profession sufficiently? The IBA published a report, one in 2021, about the well-being of lawyers. And the Young Lawyers Committee of the International Bar Association published one earlier this year. And the results are fairly disconcerting, to say the least. Apparently, 1/5 of the legal profession amongst the young lawyers, this is 40 and below, apologies and my condolences to anybody who doesn't fit in that category, well, they're going to leave. That's the indication given by the young lawyers today. And Hannah, it's interesting that you talked about your daughter. In Singapore, just last week or the week before, the president of Our Law Society ran an article in the papers about lawyers and lawyers' children. And apparently, a lot more lawyers do not want their children to become lawyers this year compared to the last. So where's the trajectory for that, Hannah?
Oh my goodness. I spend hours training on this, so how am I going to fit this into 1 minute? You referenced a few studies there, and when I started working in the mental health and wellness space for lawyers 6 years ago, I did so to help people like me at the time. I was 35, had the title partner, had the nice house, nice cars. My husband was a partner in a law firm as well. We had 2 healthy children. And yet I was chronically stressed and actually quite unhappy, which, you look at life on paper and say, why on earth are you unhappy? And those are the people I thought I would have to help. But over the last few years, and this is frightening, the number of junior lawyers suffering with stress and mental health conditions has rocketed. And there was a study, the Junior Lawyers Division in the UK, I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was something like 17% said that in the 2 weeks before the survey, they'd considered suicide of junior lawyers. So we are doing something wrong, very wrong. We are getting better, I hope, and there's not just myself. There are many people working in this arena now to improve mental health for lawyers. And I'll be honest, yes, the junior lawyers have a part to play because mental health and well-being is always 50-50, the organisation that you work for and the individual themselves. But actually the real responsibility for me lies with the leaders, the partners that they work for, the example that they set, the team leaders that they work for. If they don't value their own mental health and well-being, if they don't value their own boundaries around their work and what time they finish and their weekends, their evenings and their holidays, then the juniors don't feel able to either. And yet we are facing a new generation of lawyers, as many of you have probably seen, where they do have very different boundaries to us older lawyers. They are saying, 6 o'clock, that's it, I've finished now for the day. And then unfortunately the senior lawyers are picking it all up because somebody needs to do it for the client. So we are seeing a really big generational shift, and it will be interesting to see how it pans out over the next few years. I don't know if any of the panel have got any thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. I think there's also a dimension that has been covered but not really addressed completely here to what I've seen in the new generation is also sometimes when they leave university or they enter the legal practice, they don't have much hope. But they don't have much hope also because they don't know what is possible So again, and it's a personal example for me, my core specialization is law of the sea. Law of the sea is a very super special niche, among the niche of international law. And it's not being taught anymore at university. In most universities, it's not trendy. You do investment law, you do human rights, you do WTO, but law of the sea is a bit strange, it's a bit dusty. And basically, a lot of students, at university, they really enjoy this subject when they have the chance to take it. But they don't believe it's possible to practice in the field because there's no example. And so for me, when I had the chance, I have like a strange background because I was working at the UN before, and then I actually founded my law firm after, all of this. And I actually didn't want to listen, to people telling me it's impossible to work in these fields, because for me it was making no sense to actually believe that such a big field, such a huge ecosystem could not have any opportunities to offer, for clients, for companies, but not as a business model, to be of service to the companies who wants to operate activities and needs to be guided, basically. And so I think there's also hope to give, to students. And often the tip that I give is not to listen to people, really listen to your guts, because, a lot of people repeat what they've heard without actually thinking or challenging, the status quo. And there's still a lot of innovation to do in the legal practice in terms of services, in terms of range of services, everything. And so if we believe that we're stuck in a model, I think it's the wrong way to evolve in the next years. I think we should really be curious, exactly, and embrace diversity and be able to challenge, the status quo and say, look, there's a gap here. Yeah, and actually the myth of saying like you need to enter a big law firm to have like a nice business, it's a myth, because as a single practitioner you can do really well and you can have a lot of fun. And no, but it's true, and it's important to state it, it's not just the nightmare, it's also the satisfaction. You can have fun, you can discover things, you can work on topics you never dreamed you're going to work on. So it's really curiosity and innovation for me.
Panel, would you like to open to the audience in your last 9 minutes?
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Franco, have you got a very quick point?
A very quick point, and adding what you were saying. I mean, the generation Z and Y, this is the future. And all companies, be it a law firm or whatever, this will be one of the most challenges we have, because they completely tick differently. And if we do not move as employers, the Z and Y will not move. We have to adapt to them. Why? Because otherwise we don't have clients.
Yeah.
Because if we have no resources, we will have no clients.
And so my question then is, how do we bridge the gap? So based on the survey, 41% of the young lawyers can't even begin the conversation with bosses. They can't talk about mental wellness. So where do we go from here? Any thoughts?
I think many of them need social skills because I run an NGO together with my family called Sport for Understanding, where we train youths and children in communicating and learning basic conflict resolution skills. And we do exchanges across countries, and what we experience, they lack the ability to small talk. A simple skill of meeting what we do in this conference. They are not trained in it. They are very good on social media and online, but meeting you guys face to face, up here, out here in the hall, and talking, they are not trained in that. So we need to learn them basic communication skills. But that's, I think, part of what you mentioned. You said, we learn them imagination. And a lawyer needs to learn to imagine it and to be creative. And that's part of the skills I think we need to focus on.
Yeah.
On a lighter note, I mean, they need basic communication skills. We need to give them a lot more coffee breaks. I think the learning will happen there.
I never thought you'd have to train lawyers how to talk, but apparently so. I just want to pick up very quickly on Virginie's point about embracing diversity. Is there a challenge for women lawyers in particular?
Well, thank you, Mark, because as Mark and I were both just fighting there to speak, I don't know if you noticed who was going to go first. But yes, this is actually a topic that Kanchan mentioned to me earlier this week. I mean, it's close to my heart. Since 2018, I've been running various women in law groups. And I was actually going to say, I'm very pleased with our panel composition today. So congratulations to the organisers. I like to think it was planned and not an accident, but very pleased with our panel composition. But yes, there is clearly huge challenges in the legal profession still, with women joining and staying in the profession. In the UK, 54% of new entrants every year are women, and yet about 30% are partners. And I think it's 15% are equity partners. So there's clearly still a long way to go, I think, in the profession with regards to women.
I mean, that's visible from the audience. How many women lawyers do we have here? I mean, if y'all can raise your hands. What, it's
How kind.
about 15%, I believe so.
15%.
So
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry, Mark. I was about actually to ask a question to my female colleagues. I've experienced specific issues linked not only to the fact that I'm a female, but that I'm young. And so there's a problem of credibility as a woman when you're young. You're more respected if you're 50, 60. And this is, I think, a problem as well. It's not just, basically the sex or gender. It's really the problem also of how you perceived depending on your age. And I don't know if it's specific to women, but I felt it was more specific to women. And it's been for me something that I've been struggling with even now. I feel like it will be better, at 60. I'm more successful.
Don't wish your life away, Virginie. No.
let's meet again when you're 60.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it does seem like we've got our work cut out for us. It's not just a question of women lawyers being involved, but now women partners, right? And how then do we ensure not just that there isn't a glass ceiling, but that as law firms, we actively cultivate our women partners so that we bring out the best, right? And fully leverage on talent. I think that seems to be the key when we talk about being better lawyers, better law firms in the service of our clients. Now, we've covered quite a range of topics today. We've got just 4 minutes left. We would like to open the floor to some questions, and I see hands going up.
Go to the microphone, don't forget.
So we have to go to the mic.
Hi. My question is relating the last of what you just spoke about women and mental health. And I know a lot of organizations. One of my closest friends, he had a heart attack at the age of 28. And he was working on a firm, in a law firm in India. And now he's having trouble finding a job because other organizations are saying, oh, you're already at risk and we don't want to put you in a stressful situation. And I know this is true of mental health also. When you open up and you honestly say that, I do suffer from this and this, organizations tend to shy away. So my question is, how can organizations better equip themselves to be more sensitive to these issues?
That's a great question. Franco?
May I start with a short story from a friend of mine, partner in a law firm, and his quote was, "We value your service the way you are perceived by how much money or how much income it is. And if money, income, is the key value in this, that's why maybe part of the reason 60% of lawyers are divorced and see less to their children. So what kind of value, where is the goal for a success? And I think individually we need to ask ourselves, when will I be happy? And what kind of work will I do when I'm happy? Do I need to earn X or Y? And can I do different things? I think that's part of it, but as long as the industry is pointing toward value of money, I think this is a huge challenge, and that's why your friend have difficulty coming back.
If I may add, let's look at the Z generation. They have already solved it. I mean, the two of us are the old white men. They have already solved it. They would not do that anymore. No way. They want to have a purpose. They want to have a purpose of the company, and they have their own purpose. Then they will match it. If it doesn't match, they will not work for you. And they will not make partner. They don't want, even if you want them. So that's the issue you have now as a partnership. What do I do with them? You have to move as a partnership. They will not move. So, partner that only work project-wise, terrible. It will come. It will come. Partner that work only part-time. I know this already exists, but it will come to a much broader extent. And there, with the set, there is no issue between female or male anymore. They want the same. So we have to ask the Z generation, what do you want? How can I bring you in the business, in the lawyer business, in the financial business? When would you come? When what would be given? That's the only way, in my point of view.
Yeah. Maybe we've got time for one more question.
Actually, we are out of time.
No, we haven't.
We have 40 seconds. Would you like to add another answer to this question?
Well, yes, my thoughts were to the question of does this person tell their potential employers? Very difficult decision, and I know that. My preference for people I'm supporting would always be yes, find the places where you can be honest. The level of the honesty is up to you, but certainly with the employer, both employed and self-employed team that we have, we always want to know where they need our support so that we can give it. So I think hopefully everyone will be able to find the right homes for themselves, because there's the argument that mental health affects 1 in 4 of us. It affects 1 in 1 of us. We all have mental health, just like we all have physical health, and we all need to look after it.
Well, it seems that we've pretty much run out of time, but for my part, I would just like to really thank everyone for listening. We've covered, again, quite a bit of ground, and maybe just to pull the strands together very quickly. We talked about the challenges that we faced, the online justice, and whether that is really going to come to fruition. And then we really talked about the role and the purpose that we have as a legal community. Virginia shared a little bit more about how we need to interact more and understand each other and understand the business as well as the roles that each of us play, and to focus not on differences but on synergies. We don't just see each other as counterparts, right, but as the other side. And it does seem, right, that above all, us being humans fundamentally, and lawyers are human, that is absolutely key. That is absolutely key. And I think only with that perspective can we look after the next generation of lawyers and future leaders, the young, and all of us as we progress through the profession, because it's tough, right? And mental health issues, well, they are always at the forefront. And I think, and what I gather, from hearing various ones on this panel, is that if we are to forge forward as a profession, to stay relevant and on top of things, then we need to look after ourselves as lawyers. We need to ensure that we are sustainable, and that then puts us in the position to continue to do well.
Fantastic.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
For sharing your personal experiences with us. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you, moderator. I believe consigliere was also in The Godfather, yes? Yeah, wasn't it? Thank you. Thank you, Mrs.